Hey guys, it's me, Beau, back once again with another cult movie review. In today's video, I'm going to be reviewing the Danny Boyle thriller, The Beach. I saw this one many years ago. I remember there being a lot of hype around the film when it was released and everyone gushing over Leonardo DiCaprio. Anyways, before we get into it, guys, if you haven't already, please do consider subscribing. Your support is greatly appreciated. So The Beach was based on the 1996 novel by author Alex Garland, and it marked Danny Boyle's fourth film as director. Produced on a budget of over $14 million, the movie was also Boyle's biggest production to date. Leonardo DiCaprio starred in the lead role, with Tilda Swinton and Robert Carlyle supporting. DiCaprio was just entering the height of his fame, coming off the giant success that was Titanic from 1997. Interestingly, actor and longtime collaborator Ewan McGregor was originally cast to play the main character. Pre-production began sometime in 1998, and during that time McGregor was let go from the project. Now, from my understanding, McGregor, who had previously starred in Boyle's first three movies, expected to take the lead role. Boyle, on the other hand, had different ideas and asked McGregor, which resulted in the two not speaking for several years. Now, yeah, I like Ewan McGregor as an actor. Not too much of a fan of him, kind of personally. He's got some own, issues. But yeah, when I think about him being cast in the lead role, I think he would have done a good job. That said, DiCaprio also gave a great performance. And yeah, I guess things turned out best for everyone involved. Now, here in the UK, the movie was a big deal upon its release. It received loads of hype and media attention on TV and the radio. I was a little too young to really appreciate or care about the film when it was released, but I ended up watching it a few years later, and yeah, I enjoyed it. As time has passed and I've gotten a little older and experienced a few things, I now love the film and appreciate it on a much more personal level. So the film followed the character Richard, played by DiCaprio. He was this young, brash American in his 20s who was bored of his life and was searching for a deeper meaning. Richard was tired of the same old routine and longed for change. So he travelled to Bangkok, where he met a French couple and a strange, eccentric Scotsman called Daffy, played by Robert Carlyle. I guess you could kind of best describe Daffy's behaviour as manic and clearly a guy on the edge. One night, Daffy told Richard about his troubled past and how he used to live on this exotic island, a secret place hidden from the world. Daffy described it as paradise, the ultimate destination with its white sand beaches and tropical blue ocean. Richard, of course, was rightfully skeptical, like we all would be, but Daffy produced a map detailing the island's location. Daffy was adamant that it was a real place, it existed, and it was like no other in the world. Strangely enough, the next day, Richard found Daffy dead from some self-inflicted wounds. While the whole ordeal was extremely gruesome and confusing, it did bring Richard and his newfound friends Etienne and Francois closer together. With nothing else to lose, Richard and the couple decided to search for this so-called Paradise Island that Daffy was talking about. The trio eventually made it to the island and slowly integrated themselves within the community, which was led by Sal, played by Tilda Swinton. A well-spoken, quasi-aristocratic hippie of sorts. Sal had built up this hedonistic commune away from the rest of the world where people felt like they were a part of something significant. Initially, things seemed great. A true paradise with everyone getting along and working together. But this blissful existence could only last so long before the harsh realities of life kicked in. We saw a deadly shark attack that left 2 campmates dead. It was pretty gruesome with, all the blood and the arms flailing all over the place. One survivor, a guy called Christo, managed to escape but lost his leg in the process. Now, normally a person in that situation, would get medical treatment immediately, but this wasn't the case. There was little the group could do, and taking him back to the mainland was just not an option. In addition to this, Sal wouldn't allow any doctors to visit the island, so they basically ousted Christo away from the community and practically left him to die alone. You see, this beach community was a paradise, and anything that took away from their sense of bliss had to be removed. There's just no way. He'd ruin the mood, right? He'd bring everything down. And so, they left Christo to his own devices. It was a very cruel measure to take, but this utopian society that Sal had built was just not sustainable without the element of consequence. And the violent shark attack and its aftermath represented that consequence. Separately to all of this, Richard became infatuated with Francois, played by actress Virginie Ledoyen. They slowly grew closer together, all the while Francois's boyfriend was none the wiser. She was two-timing him, and I guess she couldn't care less. And then things got even more complicated when Richard went against his better judgment and slept with Sal. When I saw that, I did question Richard's motives. But you see, if you think about it, Richard saw Sal and the power that she had, and he knew if he didn't keep her happy, it could potentially jeopardize his place within the group. And so he went along with what she wanted, and hopefully in doing so secured his place within the community. Looking at the film as a whole, you could describe it as this philosophical exploration into the idea of paradise and what that really means. Danny Boyle was making a point about how people can chase this perfection and lose themselves in the process. It's also a deep dive into the psyche of young backpackers as they entered the new millennium. You had this community loving their relaxed bohemian lifestyle, never wanting to return to the modern consumerist world. Yet they still wanted their luxuries that the rest of the world provided. The island, I guess, wasn't enough to fulfill the actual needs. So ultimately, this hidden paradise was not this perfect utopia that they thought it would be. Now, I want to take a moment to discuss the amazing locations used in the film. The island that we saw in the movie was Maya Bay Beach in southern Thailand, a picturesque place that was the perfect location to use for the story. Yeah, I mean, the scenery was absolutely beautiful with the white sand beaches and the ocean. It's just, it's just an amazing place. You know, for all the movie's faults and loopholes, I don't think anyone can deny the film's strong visual qualities. I must say, it was a shame to read that since the film's release, the actual beach has experienced a lot of issues with tourists coming to visit. What once was a secluded location has now become a hotspot for travellers from around the world. Let's take a moment to talk about the soundtrack. Now, as I mentioned, the beach, when it was released here in the UK, gained a lot of media attention. Now, one of the contributing factors to the film's popularity in the UK was the girl band All Saints and their song Pure Shores. The pop group provided the song for the soundtrack and became a #1 selling single in the UK music chart. Now, I've never been a huge fan of All Saints and their music, but there's no doubt that the song Pure Shores is an absolutely fantastic pop song, and it matched perfectly with the film. And you know, when it came to the music video, it was played constantly on MTV and all the other music channels. You know, I was getting into music at the time, and I remember that song being played everywhere. The soundtrack itself features some brilliant artists such as New Order, Faithless and Moby. And you know, while I'm here, I have to mention that amazing scene where we saw Richard and the others go to the beach for the first time, and you heard the song Porcelain by Moby playing in the background. I mean, it's just a wonderful moment. And just the other day I kind of went on YouTube and just saw that clip again, and yeah man, you get the feels for that. That's some nostalgia hit. And you know, it shows you that if you use the right music, it can really make a significant impact to your film. And I really enjoyed that whole early 2000s vibe. You know, it was a new century, a millennium. People were kind of generally positive about the future. Things were looking up. You know, the 90s were over, but you know, people were still hopeful. This of course changed in September 2001 with the 9/11 attacks, but songs like Porcelain remind me of that new millennium vibe that we all experienced. And so, dislikes for The Beach from the year 2000. Now, my biggest dislike for the movie would have to be the Richard character in general. When it came to DiCaprio's performance, no doubt he did a great job. I don't fault him, and you know, he put a lot of work into the role, and that's clearly, you know, shows on screen. It's just, given everything Richard does during the movie, it made me not really like the guy. He was a cheat. He was a liar. He was a murderer. Underneath, Richard was not a good person. In his own mind, he was the good guy, doing the right thing for himself. But being young, free and single is no excuse to be selfish and irresponsible. You know, the film stressed friendship and loyalty, but Richard and the people around him were anything but loyal. I guess maybe the filmmakers had this idea that if they cast a young, good-looking actor in the lead role, his actions wouldn't seem that bad. As in, the lead character was too likable for the viewer to hate. But ultimately, Richard was not a nice guy. And yeah, I did find it hard to root for him. Imagine if Richard wasn't this American toy boy, but instead this creepy old looking dude. To the audience, we would see the character's faults, but here it's like Richard hid behind this attractive persona. I guess the only saving grace is that the Tilda Swinton character, Sal, was far more vile and in turn made Richard seem less of a bad guy. And so, ratings for The Beach. I'm going to be rating this movie a solid 5.5 out of 10. Watching The Beach was no doubt a captivating experience. The wonderful scenery and brilliant cinematography by Darius Khondji elevated the movie's overall tone and vibe. What made the film so engaging was Boyle's trademark style that was on display, that combined the stunning visuals with a cast of interesting actors with an also brilliant soundtrack to back it up. Boyle's previous movie, A Life Less Ordinary from 1997, didn't really live up to expectations and was criticised upon its release. While The Beach also received negative attention when it was released, the movie has gained more praise as the years have passed. While I prefer Boyle's first two movies, The Beach was definitely a return to form for the director. It's fair to say that the first half of The Beach is much stronger compared to the second half. The story became more muddled towards the end, and sometimes it just wasn't clear what was actually going on. But for me, the good outweighed the bad, and I'd much rather watch this movie again than any stuff that Hollywood releases these days. So yeah, that's The Beach, a good movie and a movie that I recommend. Well, that's all from me today, guys. I hope you've enjoyed this review. I will be back next week with more. Don't forget to subscribe, and of course, take care.